like to say a few words to mark the occasion?
I can't think of anything.
This is the opening scene to Fight Club, a scene many of you have seen many, many times. But there's something that feels a little off. Maybe let's watch a little bit more and see if we can figure out what's different.
Getting exciting now.
This is Garfield minus Garfield, which is a webcomic that started in 2008 and consists of nothing but actual Garfield comic strips where the character Garfield is digitally removed. It ends up being a very depressing look at the life of the new protagonist, John Arbuckle. Garfield minus Garfield is an example of a really niche art form or genre of art that I'm going to call subtractive appropriation. So definitions, appropriation means to take any piece of art that exists and use it in your own art. In music, it's often called sampling, and it happens all the time in music. Subtractive, of course, means to subtract, or in our case, to remove elements of. The difference between normal appropriation is that all that they're doing with this Garfield minus Garfield, all that the creator is doing is taking something that exists and not combining it, not adding to it, just taking an element out of it and creating its own art form out of that. Examples of subtractive appropriation are pretty hard to find just because it's so niche and probably doesn't occur too often. The only ones I was really able to think of, other than this Fight Club movie we're about to talk about, is Garfield minus Garfield and a movie that I made, which is a fan edit of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where I removed every line of dialogue. For video editors, it's kind of a rite of passage to make your own version of Star Wars Episode 1. It's probably the most fan-edited movie ever. And I was trying to assess what was bad about the movie, what I could do to make it better, and I discovered that, well, the entire script was bad. So I just cut it out. In case you didn't figure it out earlier, this version of Fight Club is the exact same movie that we all saw, except it has no voiceover.
2.5.
The reason that it works is because none of the voiceover is expository. It doesn't really explain anything that you need to know. It's more just like a train of thought, the crazy ramblings of a lunatic. And so the movie ends up becoming a lot more bleak, a lot less funny, but just as cohesive. You're able to follow it fine. I'm not really going to let this video turn into one of those, quote, video essays. So here's just a couple spots that I think are pretty cool without voiceover.
No! No!
We simply do not have time for this crap.
There's one part that doesn't really work.
A times B times C equals X.
And then there's one part that's it feels a little out of place.
While the rest of us were sleeping, he worked. He had one part-time job as a projectionist.
I've had someone ask me, which one do I prefer? Which version do I prefer? The one with voiceover or without? And it's kind of not a possible question to answer because I see them as two completely different films. And so I think that this is the best example that I've been able to find of this subtractive appropriation. This is the entire version of Fight Club from the first frame to the last frame. It's the same movie, except it does not have voiceover. And I think that's pretty dang cool.